Welcome to my podcast, Cyberglass Ceiling. I'm going to have a light-hearted fireside chat with some people who are leaders in the industry of cybersecurity. Prominent for the fact that they are either women, people of colour, LGBTQ, or just different. The term glass ceiling refers to sometimes invisible barriers to success that many come up against in their careers. A management consultant called Marilyn Loden coined the phrase almost 40 years ago regarding women rising to senior positions and says it's still as relevant as ever today. So I've taken it a little step further, not just women, but people of colour and bias that may exist in the workplace and how they overcame this to become leaders in the industry. I promise not too much swearing, no politics or religion, just a cuppa and whatever takes your fancy. Hello and welcome to my next episode of Cyberglass Ceiling. Today I've got a duo with me, Michele Proctor and Alison Bailey. Welcome, ladies.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
And it's the first time we've had a duo, and we're in not so sunny Manchester today, where when I left my house it was 21 degrees and sunny and nice and warm, and up here it's now raining and I don't know, it's mild but it's still a bit rainy. And I've got these two ladies, wonderful ladies here today to have a discussion about them and who they are and where they work. So I'm going to start with Michele. Michele, introduce yourself, say hello.
Hiya. So I'm Michele Proctor. I'm 58 years old. I don't know if that's important here.
Don't matter. You don't look it.
It's not a dating app.
Yeah, I've stopped using them, by the way.
Okay. I was born in Aldershot, so you can tell I'm an army brat. My dad was in the army, and I spent most of my life either in Germany or down south. And when my dad retired after 22 years in the army, which I think was normal then, we went back to his hometown, which was just outside of Manchester. For the last 20 years, I've lived in just outside of Edinburgh, working for RBS, but now NatWest. But my career kind of started back from being straight out, when I was actually in Manchester, straight out of school.
Thank you. And Alison, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here. So slightly different background. I was further south than you. I was South Africa, so really south. Basically did a university degree there in business. It was quite a funny story. I wanted to be a psychologist. I thought I love people. I like trying to understand what makes them tick. I'm going to go and do psychology. So off I went for my first day of registration, and psychology clashed with computers. So it was like, I'm going to have to pick one or the other. And psychology was 6 years if you wanted to be a serious one, as in you had to do your honours, your masters and doctorate. And computers was 3. So I chose computers. So it really was a toss-up between psychology and computers. And then basically went as an in-house developer. So one of the large South African insurance companies, they were struggling to get mainframe programmers. So they basically said you could come on a course for 3 months. They would teach you. And if you passed, then they'd give you a job. If you didn't, then, good luck and well done.
Thank you very much.
Yes. So what they also didn't tell you was the course was in Afrikaans. And whilst I come from South Africa, my parents are British, so I'm an English South African person. So I could write the tests in English, but yeah, the course was in Afrikaans, which is quite a challenge. But obviously I passed, so I had a job and did that in South Africa. Got a bit bored programming because you sort of sit in a dark room when you're doing mainframe programming, doing hexadecimal dumps, and it all sounds very technical. So I moved into the people side because that is where I really do find satisfaction. So was then looking at doing program management and moved into a different company doing disaster recovery. And that was, we first had a very male-orientated and gentlemen of a certain age, because they were all consultants and most of them were expats. So that was an interesting one doing that.
Okay.
And then decided when I had a breakup on a personal level, if I was going to start over, I may as well start over here.
In the UK.
So moved to the UK.
Wonderful. And we'll touch on that in a minute because you've been at Lloyds Banking Group for a long time.
Yeah. Started off as a contractor and then went perm. So,
there
yes.
you go. So, like I said, how it works, we're going to run through a few questions and it's going to be good to sort of bounce off each other type thing. And Michele, you've been at NatWest, RBS and even Barclays for a touch.
It was 7 years at Barclays, yeah.
In the early days. So you've both been in sort of banking and for forever. Because it's again, you're 14 years at Lloyds Banking Group. But before that you're at Monster.
I was at Monster, yes.
And that's Monster's the recruiting.
The online recruitment,
yeah,
yes.
That's it. Michele, I'm going to start with you. What was your first job?
It was a work experience for British Gas. And this was working in like a telephony bureau for customers, like ringing up about their meter readings or they've got a gas leak or something. And it was very much on a inquiry centre. So it was headset, picking up the phone and, yeah.
In a call centre type
In
thing?
a very early call centre.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was that straight from school?
So I finished school in Germany. It was Forces School, British Forces School, just at the same time my dad came out of the army. And when I came back to the UK, I enrolled in college just to see like what kind of things I wanted to do. And I was, and we'll talk about capriciousness and being in a state of flux and not knowing what I want to do because it was like, some going on in my head at the time. But I did everything. I learned how to weld. I learned how to make jewellery. I learned how to... There was a bit of computing going on, and so I was into everything because I didn't know where I was and what I was in.
As I would say, because believe it or not, we're sort of a similar age. I'm a couple of years younger, but it's like understanding which way is up and what you want to do. And I've come across this with a whole bunch of people I've interviewed. It's that, there is no map laid out. This is what I'm going to do, and that's how I'm going to do it for the rest of my life. It's about, actually, I might try that, and if it doesn't work, I'm going to do something else. And if that doesn't work, I'll try something else. And then we've all been there. And I'll let you into a wee secret what I did for my first job. I've not revealed it yet.
Yeah, so a little bit of like not knowing what I'm doing, where my head is at, massive turmoil in personal life thinking. I'm no longer got the sanctuary or the comfort of an army life. Straight into East Manchester, going to college, people of all sorts of shapes, sizes and everything. And it was just, my identity was gone. I didn't understand why I was so flighty, why I couldn't focus, why I couldn't concentrate and this sort of stuff. But it'll all like fit into place later.
Okay. And Alison, you did the whole education thing in 3 years.
I did the whole education thing for 3 years.
And
got the piece of paper.
Yes,
although people now ask, did you just get it out the vending machine? Because I don't think the South African pieces of paper count as much as they used to.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. And for the first job, what did you end up starting to do?
Well, you come out of university thinking, oh, everyone's going to want me, right? I've got my qualifications, so there's going to be a massive demand. And you send off your CV to everybody saying, I've not done anything, but here's my degree. And you get radio silence from a lot of people because they want experience. But I think perseverance and continuing to just send that out. So my first job, whilst I was sort of trying to figure out again where I'm going to go permanently, was actually doing data entry and account reconciliation. So it was getting all the invoices for a company and then putting them in and trying to reconcile the payments with the receipts and all of those things. And the books were a bit of a mess. So it was a big challenge to try and get them sorted. Fortunately, that was only a couple of months. And then one of my requests out to companies came back and said, yes, would you like to do this in-house assembler course? So it was a short-lived data entry job.
Fantastic. I know a little bit about accounting stroke data entry, double entry bookkeeping.
Yes.
I had to do that when I was temping, trying to find my way in the world, and it's something I got. It was all right. It was easy for me to do it, but it was still manual rather than on a computer. It was literally double entry bookkeeping. I was like, yeah, I can do this, but again, it's just something. As I said, you sort of find your feet in what you want to do. So, talking of finding your feet, and I'm going to start with you again, Alison. The world of IT and cybersecurity. Now, as we said earlier, you've been doing the program management and change management thing, and I'm assuming or guessing that also involves a lot of the security stuff as well.
The cybersecurity bit came later, so I don't have any formal qualifications in cybersecurity, and I think that's quite a key thing. Is you can learn on the job, you can apply. Don't be put off by thinking you have to tick all the boxes and have learned everything. So I'd been with the bank for a while and was looking for an interesting job change within the bank, and the sort of cybersecurity came up, and I applied for that and was successful in doing that, and that was sort of 2017 odd. And then I've been doing various roles for cybersecurity. So I looked at doing some private cloud, working with our private cloud vendor, doing a little bit on engagement, so how we can engage how people engage with us within cybersecurity, because a lot of people sort of see you as a dark art, and I don't quite know how I talk to you, or I don't understand your language. So did a bit around that, and I'm now doing DigiCerts, so digital certificates.
Yep, absolutely. And and you coming from 100 years, no, it's only 20 years. I'm only kidding, Michele. What was the trigger for you? Because as you said earlier, it was like, oh, what do I do? What's going to satisfy those thought processes about how do you get to where you are now?
Yeah, so I think I matured very slowly, so still flighty at around 25, and then went to, and then decided that I actually should do something. So I went to further education in Bolton. I think it was called Bolton Institute of Higher Education at the time. It's now a university, but it wasn't when I was there. And I got an HNC in computing, which started me on the right road. But that was when I was working with British Gas. So I went from that telephone bureau and very slowly matured, because at the time you are surrounded by people who don't necessarily have much of a career path, and it's just a job to them. There's no passion and no career, and I just knew that I was something different. This was not for me. So I went into the IT side of things at British Gas, and they supported the day release Bolton. Came out of that, and then was very much like you as a COBOL programmer. It was, and then I realised actually I'm not a massive, really good COBOL programmer, but what I can do is the COBOL programmers around me that kind of need a bit more support or don't really fit in with a corporate organisation. I was really good at helping them and supporting them at a very early age. So when I went to Barclays, it was my first managerial job in a design assurance type of role, and then moved to NatWest, RBS NatWest, and in 2015 there was an opportunity in IT security, as it wasn't in, and I just thought that's one of the things I haven't tried.
So it sort of leads me on, and this is about the interviewing and the interview stage, and you're both lovely ladies, and we all know that the world of IT is dominated by middle-aged men, and I've said it 100 times already, with pot bellies, bad t-shirts, and ponytails. And you guys have broken through the glass ceiling to become leaders in what you do. And Alison, can you recall that time when it was like, well, why is she applying for this job type thing? Did it happen, and how did you combat that?
I think it's interesting because the first job that I sort of applied for, other than the assembler job, was actually, as I said, the disaster recovery business continuity firm, and that was very much male orientated. But interestingly, we had the South Africans who are very much, if they're an Afrikaans South African, they can tend to be quite sexist and going, well, yes, you are, get me the cup of tea and, have you done the diary kind of thing. But we had the expats who'd come over who were very much open to, if you've got the skills and you've got the enthusiasm, then that's what we want. So they were really keen to hire me, but it did ruffle a few feathers amongst the older, more traditional South Africans.
That's interesting. So culturally, with the expats, it wasn't too bad, but within the South African community, it was like, was it really, woman, know your place type thing? I'm just.
Yeah, we hadn't. I mean, I'm 52, so not a little bit behind you, but not ahead of the apartheid bit. So we were still going through apartheid, where we had very much, girls only school, generally whites only, where I was going through. So university was my first sort of experience of, wow, there's a whole lot of new people out here. There's opposite genders and there's different, colours and accents and all sorts of things, because we were very insular in our school. So there wasn't quite that positive affirmative action or whatever, I can't remember what the exact words are, where actually it was, well, we do want to embrace diversity. It was very much a traditional point at that time. So it was later, as you sort of moved on your career, Nelson Mandela got released, that then there was black economic empowerment and people were actively trying to create more diversity in the workplace. So it was a really interesting time to be going through.
Yeah, and when I was interviewing Warren Small, I think in the last episode, I said to him that because of the change that was going on in South Africa at the time with Nelson Mandela being released, he goes, was it easier for him as a black guy to come up through the ranks? And his answer was no.
Really?
Yeah, because unless you knew somebody, it was still a bit of a struggle. And if your parents worked at a certain place, that was okay. If you didn't know anybody within a certain business, it was still very difficult to get in. But
Interesting.
Again, I also remember a part. I remember the whole thing, and I just thought, okay, that's interesting. And I look at South Africa now, and it's just like everywhere else. I've never visited, but my sister has, and she said it's an amazing place. It's a beautiful place. I'm like, yeah, great, fantastic. And it's interesting that what you've just said about sort of opportunity for a female coming up, as well as what Warren was saying, it makes a bit more sense. Okay, moving on. The exciting thing is you guys are now sort of leaders in your workplaces. Michele, you're at NatWest. Alison, you're at Lloyds Banking Group, and you've been there for quite some time, the pair is. So have you seen that change and that diverse change, and what it's meant for more women coming through, people of colour, people of whether it be LGBTQ, and we're going to touch on neurodiverse in a second. So, Michele, we'll start with you. What have you seen, and how do you, as a leader, sort of make sure that diversity continues?
Yeah. So the whole industry from actually, I think it was 1991 when I did my HNC. So we are talking 32 years? 32 years that I've been in IT. And
so in 1991 I was drunk. So I think the whole of the 90s I was drunk. So.
That was your cloudy era. But yeah, so I would say the whole industry from that point to now has just grown and evolved and become a really diverse workplace. And it is such a positive industry to be in because of that. I remember the old dinosaurs that we worked for, the amount of unconscious bias that was there, and maybe a little bit of conscious bias, you never really know, was just prevalent. And it was a combination of lads' clubs. It was the sexism or the misogynism and things like that. That was there in the whole industry, and probably not solely with the either. But there has been a kind of revolution in the last, I would say, 8-10 years, where it's really important to educate diversity and inclusion and actually talk about, because if you talk about the corporate numbers and the commercial element of things, there's even that thing about the opportunities that you're missing if you are not including these type of people, whether it's as customers, whether it's actually as vendors, suppliers, staff, people. You're just, you're missing out on so much.
Indeed. And Alison?
Yeah, I would agree with that, because if you look, we're both in service, it's banking. So your customer is basically, your be all and end all. You need to make sure you don't lose your customers, or you don't have a company. And our customers are very diverse. So I think by bringing in a whole lot of diverse people into your workforce, you are getting to understand what do your customers need, how do they react. You get such a different insight into things. Mm-hmm. And just bringing in that fresh approach, even if they don't have IT skills, we can train the skills. If you've got the right attitude and the right behaviors, we can teach you the skills. So I think in the past it's always been, well, have you passed this? What are your computer, degrees and skills? What certifications have you got? Now it's more, how do you approach things? Do you like problem solving? Are you able to collaborate, work together? Mm-hmm. That is very much, it's more about your values and behaviors and your culture than what did you get and can you analyze a hexadecimal dump?
No, understood. And I interviewed a lady called Elizabeth Huffman, who's a director of cybersecurity for KPMG, and on the services side. And KPMG have gone out of their way to hire, if you like, those people of those diverse people, to make it a what's the word I would use? Not a plan as per se, but to make sure they, as an institution, do exactly that. Have a mixture of people, because, and I've said it in a few episodes, that in our industry, when you sit in a room and you're the only female or person of colour, and you've got, again, it's no slight and it's not in a bitch fest again, you see all these guys sitting around the table and they're all the same and they have the same ideas, and you think to yourself, do you know what, if someone else was in, or someone, and you're right, it's starting to happen. 10 years, I'd probably probably say, I don't know, what we're in now, from about 2017 onwards, I believe it started to change. And, I saw it in sport. You saw it in the sort of Me Too movement. When was that? That was probably 2017, 2018. And it was a wake-up call. And you see it on TV, you see it in sport, especially now that women's football. The World Cup's just about to start in Australia. And, I'm going to put my hands up. And I used to giggle at ladies' football because it was like, well, it's not the same. But it doesn't matter it's not the same because they're doing the same thing. And a dinosaur like myself had to rethink how he changed, because I've got 3 daughters. And they go, Dad, you can't say that. And I was like, well, it is the same, but it's not the same. And you try and put up an argument that, women's football is different to men's football. Yes, it is. But they're doing the same thing. And it's the same sort of skill set. And you sort of think to yourself, well, actually, I still can't do that as a male, but these women can do.
Mm-hmm. And that's interesting, because I don't do football. I mean, South African, we do rugby and cricket, right? However, I watched the women's football.
Hang on, South Africa's still the world champions, right? I believe so. Yeah, 4 years ago, they beat England. So.
Yeah, well, I've dual citizenship, right? So I can choose which side I'm presenting.
Okay.
Flip on popularity.
Exactly, yes, whoever's winning. But seriously, the women's football, I watched that, and it was incredibly moving. Whereas the men's football, I still think they can be a little bit prima donna-y, and it doesn't seem as collaborative.
Yep.
The Lionesses went out there, and it was enough to bring tears to your eyes, because they honestly worked together as a team. And I think that was the amazing thing for me, is it felt different to what they might be doing the same thing and kicking a ball, but it felt different and it felt more inclusive.
And you know what? They actually won something.
We did.
We won the European Cup, and it's something that's no English men's team has achieved. The only thing we did was 1966. I wasn't born, sorry, Michelle. And we won the World Cup. I'm not having a go. She's going to beat me up later, I'm sorry. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back after these words.
Sea Vision International is a global event and advisory firm dedicated to convening leading visionaries in an exclusive environment for peer-to-peer collaboration. Our programs highlight critical business challenges and deliver the best available applied sciences aimed to change the world. Your vision is our mission. Let us help you build your company's future today, not tomorrow.
And welcome back to my next episode of Cyberglass Ceiling. And with me, I have Michele Proctor, who works at NatWest Bank. And I have Alison Bailey, who's at Lloyds Banking Group. And we're here today to have a good guess about how they've come up through the ranks to be leaders in their fields for their companies. And banking is what we're all in. So we shall carry on. But now we're going to touch on something called neurodiversity. And in my opening statements, I talk about people who are different. And, growing up, we all know those people or that person that was slightly different from everybody else. And I remember me growing up thinking, leave them alone. I went to a all boys school, and it was a bit like Borstal. And if you were different, it was like a light was shone upon you like that. And so I was never bullied, and I was never a bully. And when I saw things like that happening, I'd absolutely put a stop to it because I could, and some people couldn't. So I know, Michele, that there's something that's close to your heart around neurodiversity. And in more episodes that I will do, I want to touch on it, more and more, because to do the job we do, you've got to have something about you. But also the people we work with have something about them. And we're not talking hyper intelligence, but you've got to have some sort of intelligence to do what we do. So, talk to me about not just yourself, but what you did were recognised for that made you one of the leaders in your organisation.
Yeah, and I think we mentioned it on the very first time we spoke, that one of my very first interviews for a managerial position, I was brought into the room afterwards and told by my boss at the time that I had been successful in it, but not down to normal merit. They had selected me because the particular team was very broken. They had a lot of analysts and people, technology people that were struggling working in a big corporation. And they felt that I had a very softly approach and high empathy. And that was the thing that got me the job. And I remember thinking that that wasn't really much of a compliment to me, although, that I really get the people, and I am very high empathy for people of differences. But it was not getting it through normal merit that really stuck in with me for years, thinking that I still wasn't good enough to be a manager, but I slipped through the net somehow. And I think you said something instantly, saying like it's still, it might be not what they've recognised, but you still have something behaviourally that actually nailed that job.
Absolutely.
And I've nailed that job ever since. And I've always been, my most recent one, so 7 years ago, I was pulled into the cryptography team at the time because they were another quite broken team with no collaboration, no real team gelling. Customer service was absolutely down the pan. And I was promoted into that role to wrap my arms around it and fix it, and it came naturally to me, being a people person, being a high empathy, understanding that especially in our industry there are an awful lot of people that are neurodiverse. I can manage them empathetically and support them through some of the more difficult bits of working in a corporate organisation.
So, Alison.
Well, what I find fascinating about that is you took it as a negative when they said, well, you didn't get it on merit, but actually they were singling out for what is a really strong and really unique trait that you've got.
That's what I said.
Yeah, you did.
and that to me is, well, you won it on that. How many people can compete on that? Many can compete on merit, but very few will have that high level empathy. You
both say that, but it was the way it was delivered from a male, middle-aged white male in that organisation that had probably had it really easy being in the boys' club and going up through the ranks themselves, of ticking all the boxes, of being popular, of cracking the whip, being the high-paced delivery managers, which was what was expected, not realising that that's not the way that all teams can be managed. So it was the way it was delivered that, well, if it had been I'm paraphrasing obviously, but if it had been my choice, you wouldn't have got it. But it seems that we need somebody with high empathy to deliver that. So, yeah.
And then you built the success on that, haven't you? And doing this podcast, and one of the things I've always wanted to try and recognise is that no matter who you are, a female, person of colour, neurodiverse, LGBTQ, you can still rise up and achieve something. And it's just giving that someone a pathway to understand that goes, actually, I've recognised that I've got a certain condition, but I can still have a decent job to go up through the ranks if need be. And if there's more businesses, whether they be high corporates, whether it be banking, insurance or whatever, recognise the fact that you've got neurodiverse people in your organisation and you can do stuff about it. And again, Alison, you probably come across those individuals that you can recognise that actually they've got a fantastic brain, but they're not going to be part of the boys' club. Because it's not the way they're built. That's not the way they're recognised.
Yeah, and that's the key thing. We've actually got training that we can sign up for at Lloyds to actually say how can we help neurodiverse people. It was amazing. I actually went on some of this training, and a lot of the people were going, "Oh, we were told we were stupid. We were told we were thick." And now that we've actually grown up and we're finding out a bit more about ourselves, we're finding out we do have something on the spectrum, and that we're not stupid, we're not thick. We just need to have a different way of communicating. So we've got colleagues who struggle reading because they're dyslexic, but they're brilliant.
Yeah.
So don't make them read. Give them a speech thing that will read it for them so they can hear, because they're perfectly good at hearing. Find out what works for that person to give them the support, because if you keep doing the same thing over and over, you're going to get the same results. By embracing all of these things that other people have got that your traditional boys club or whatever you want to call it don't have, that's where you get the opportunities. But we do need to look at how we can help and how we can make them feel included, because the normal stuff that we've been used to doing for many years doesn't work.
Yeah, indeed, and it's inclusion. And I don't know, Michele, I might put you on the spot a little bit here as an example of, as I'm going to say NatWest, and how they've sort of embraced that neurodiversity within the business. Is there a...
Yeah, definitely. Everybody in our industry, we have regulatory reading and viewing. This is the stuff that every quarter you have to complete all your learnings. And learnings historically has all been about maybe fraud or health and safety. But you see more and more of these modules coming out that are about recognising the difference in people and choosing to challenge. So this is about, in an environment, we're in a very safe environment, but I'm talking about in a normal working environment. If we saw something that didn't feel right, was just negative micro behaviours and that we're being encouraged to choose a challenge, whether you do it there direct and confrontational, or whether you take them to one side, whether you delegate to a manager or whatever like that. It's a much more recent way of actually recognising micro behaviours and giving people the empowerment to actually do something about it without feeling that
Totally understand. And like I said, I've been in cybersecurity for about, 12, 13 years, but I've been in IT, in IT sales, because at the end of the day, I'm a sales guy, believe it or not, but I've been in IT sales for about 20 odd years. And I remember when I started off, you had these, excuse my French, these bobby bullshitters that had come along and they'd be going, rah, 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 I'm this, I'm that, I'm great. And you look at them and you think, I used to look at them and think, you're an absolute tool. Excuse my French, but they were an absolute tool, because to run a successful business, to be in a successful team, it's not about you as an individual. It's about how you collaborate with the rest of the people around you. And it's funny because I've seen these people, let's just call them that, think I call them Charlie Big Balls or whatever you would call it, fail because all they're concerned about is them. And then when there's someone in the organisation that may be slightly neurodiverse, they get absolutely crucified by these individuals. And it's like, no, not having it. And again, it could be a boss, it could be a manager, it could be the person that originally gave you the job. And now he's like absolutely coming down on you like a ton of bricks. And you think to yourself, that's not right. And so culture has changed. I hope it's changed anyway, where we as individuals and we as people recognise that people are different. And this is one of the whole reasons I do what I do, to make sure that people are aware that, yes, people are different and they bring different skill sets. Because if they don't, the world would be a really sad place.
But it's been a long time coming. So there are probably statistics to say that in our industry, in computing industry, there is probably the highest level numbers of people that actually are somewhere on the spectrum.
Absolutely.
The geek streak.
Is that what they call it?
Yeah, geek streak.
Yeah, because so it kind of feels like we're a bit late, because we've recognised that there have been people with neurodiversities for years, and more recently, I think the understanding around some of them, especially so something very close to my heart is ADHD in women. We've got it in the family. My niece has recently been diagnosed, and she's quite severe, but there's moderate with a lot of us, and she's quite very hyper focused. And the coping mechanisms that she's had to put in over the years means that she's not been really identified as anything like that. Whereas I think historically it was easy to identify in boys because of the completely different things that they exhibited with ADHD.
Yeah. ADHD, autism is harder to identify. Well, not harder. It's just boys would get recognised for it like that, and then girls.
Bizarre coping mechanism that we put in because we think, at a very early age, you think I'm different than everybody else, and I need to sort of mask it by putting the layers of onions or whatever they call it on just to hide things. And it's not until you hit middle age that you actually start thinking, or reading an awful lot and thinking, oh, for God's sake, this is just if not labeling, but if I didn't understand more about this, I would not have felt so isolated or felt that I was somehow deficient or whatever in something because I was not as normal as everybody else.
No.
And I think we're going to see more of this. I think we are actually going to be seeing more because there's another revolution of of the gender revolution, and the neurodiversity revolution is coming, and it's a good thing because it goes back to what we've said about the opportunities that we're missing with the perspective from different people is not to be underestimated.
No, again, I understand. We move on. Now, we live in a world where you guys are leaders in what you do, and we're going to touch on cybersecurity. And one of the questions I like to ask is that in banking, you can't get more scary when you're, in charge of millions, if not trillions, going through your systems in regards to people transact every day. And with all the threats out there and the threat landscape, a couple of things that sort of stand out that keep you awake at night, what would that be? I'm going to start with Alison.
Well, surprisingly, cybersecurity doesn't keep me awake at night. I think in Lloyds, we're very good at what we do, so it doesn't really keep me awake. The things that I would be concerned about when I am awake, rather than keeping me awake, I think the quantum computing, we haven't seen anywhere near where it's going to end up going. All the sort of bards and ChatGPT where you're going to sit there and go, we've already seen hackers have made a dark web copy of it, and they're using that to improve phishing emails. So you're no longer going to have your bad spelling mistakes and grammar saying, well done, you've got some great uncle who's died and left you some load of money back in wherever.
Please click this link.
Exactly. So I think the not knowing what we don't know is that's the bit to worry about, because I think your threat actors are moving very quickly.
So do you think AI's got a lot to still in its infancy? It may come up and be a bit more challenging.
I think personally, we're sitting looking at them, and there's a meeting going on, I think, in America, isn't there, where they're talking about how they're going to regulate it, and all of the countries are getting together. Whilst we're sitting talking about it, your threat actors and your hackers are getting on with it. So yeah, it's a slight concern when you start looking at how we can use it for good or we can use it for bad, and the people using it for bad are generally a bit faster off the mark than the people using it for good.
So it's always playing catch up.
Playing catch up, yeah.
Indeed. Just before I ask you, Michele, I went to see Mission Impossible at the weekend.
Oh yeah.
And it's all about AI, believe it or not.
Interesting.
I was like, okay, car chases. Hang on, 60-year-old Tom running like 500 metres without taking a break. And I'm like, I can't even do that. And more car chases, motorbikes, train, and then there's that's going to take over the world. Anyway, I've given too much away now, haven't I?
Honestly, do we not need to go and see it now?
No, because
Plot
it's only
spoiler.
part one. There's 2 parts to it. So the second part is probably in a couple of years. And you think, oh, well, I've forgotten the first part and I have to go re-see it again and, double the income of Mission Impossible. Sorry, get back to it. Sorry. What keeps you awake at night, Michele?
So AI definitely is in there, but I think that you've already covered that. So the other thing is around about protecting customers' identities and includes authenticating. Our customers out there, the eye-watering number of fraud that the banks actually pay back every year, because I think we all know that the industry does give back to the customers when they've had their money stolen through fraudulent means. It's billions and billions and billions. In fact, when we had the presentation from Salt Group, you came up with our two numbers. Maybe you can insert them there. But that it doesn't keep me up at night. I am able to switch off very easily, and it doesn't need a pina colada either. But it is the thing that you mentioned it earlier, that they are our bread and butter. Customers are our bread and butter. We need to protect them. Customer identity management is the next big thing we need to...
I know a bit of software that can deal with that.
Oh, yes, do you really?
But
it's like a lovely segue into a sales pitch for you.
We're not doing that. No, this is about cyber glass ceiling, not not about Salt Group. Anyway, no, and I understand that. And it leads me on to my next question, which is around practical cybersecurity advice you would give to friends or family. I'm going to go to Michele. And practical advice. We're at home and we've got our own laptops and we've got our phones and whatever, what not to do. I know we touched on it about don't click that link, but,
Bloody just stolen my thunder. So it was, it's like, don't click on anything. But I would say, and it's something not just for this, it's a fact checking. I think you're going to talk about our branding in a bit, but I'm a fact checking twit. So, and I can annoy everybody by when you see something being posted on social media, instantly I'll be going, is that actually true? And annoying people by saying, like, I don't think, and putting the reference link there to it. And so that's my thing to all my friends and family is like, just check the facts before you send it on, or you click on something, or you use that as now your own fact. That's me.
Okay. Alison?
So I've got two that I think are pretty key. Passwords. So the number of people who go, oh, well, I can't remember passwords, so I'll just use the same one everywhere. I mean,
And write it down.
Yeah, or put it in their phone and then, not put a password on the phone so that everybody can just access it. So yeah, maybe a password manager is a good thing. And then one that a number of people don't like doing, it's around currency. So make sure you've got the latest versions, because the number of vulnerabilities that, you haven't patched, if you sort of living on really old software, it's very easy for people to come in and hack you through that. So I think those apply both personally as well as professionally. Currency is a big one.
Okay, that's a new one as well, but totally understood. So don't click on links, verify everything.
Fake news.
And
It's fake news.
And like I said, even with AI and stuff like that, I think, who's the guy? This will just get, no, I can't remember. Martin Lewis.
Yeah.
There was a fake AI, was it, or I can't remember what it was. It was a fake him.
A deep fake.
Deep fake. There you go. Thank you. A deep fake. Martin Lewis talking about do this, do that, and do the other.
Didn't they have a deep fake Putin as well? That someone took over Russian broadcasting, or was that fake news? I don't know. But these are all the challenges we're facing. It's about, okay, hang on a minute, what's real, what's not real, and simple everyday things. You get an email. I mean, at the moment, my her email address has been hacked, and you've got some guy called Abdul. I'm coming for you, Abdul, when I find you. Okay, so, check out these photos. And I'm like, hang on a minute. And I know it's fake, and I have to tell my sister, sis, this is going out. Tell your friends, do not click on anything. Da 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 da. And when I find this Abdul character, I'm going to kick his ass. But that's another story for another time. Now, this is quite an important one because we're going to go back in time. I'm looking at you, Alison, for a second. I'm thinking Back to the Future, but okay.
So your 20-year-old self, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self who someone had wanted to come into the industry we're in now in regards to what they should do, what they could need to learn, or if you go back to when you were 20 years old and the career you've had now, what would you say to yourself?
That's a slightly difficult one, because when I was 20, I actually was really fortunate. I had a family that went, you can do anything. I mean, I grew up with 4 brothers, being the only girl, and it was never oh, well, you need to do the cooking, you need to sew the buttons on. It was always you're one of 5, get on with it. So I never had it in my head that I couldn't do anything. And that's why even when I went for interviews in a predominantly male-orientated environment, it never occurred to me I couldn't do it, because that's what I grew up with, is a whole lot of, males in the house. So I think do something you're passionate about. So don't do something because you want to earn money, because you'll end up potentially earning money and then going on board. What do you want to do? So your example was really interesting, where you tried a whole lot of different things. Try different things. Be brave. Don't sit there and think, well, just because I've gone and learned this, I have to do this for the rest of my life. I think that's really different where we are in the sort of 2023s versus back to the traditional. You joined up, you stayed with the company, they gave you the watch when you left, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
People are changing careers multiple times. I don't even know how many times, and not just changing jobs, but changing careers.
Yeah.
So be brave and just go out there and try it.
'Cause even
Find
though
what you're passionate about.
Even though you've been with the bank for a number of years, you've had different
roles, different
within the bank, yeah.
areas, yep.
Yeah.
And I've done that even from my assembler programming, going into business continuity and disaster recovery. And then, I did Lotus Notes, not COBOL, but yeah, assembler and then Lotus Notes. And then coming and doing Siebel consultancy and, working for Monster. It's try different things and believe in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Don't sit there. And I think a challenge we have as women is we're very much, and this is a buzzword at the moment, the imposter syndrome. So we all sit there and think, oh, I can't do that. I can't apply for that job because I'll be an imposter. I can't do 100% of the job. And it was interesting because when I worked at Monster, I was looking after their customer, their CRM system, Siebel at the time, and they wanted me to go and head up their business information. So go and do their data warehouse and all of that. I said, I can't do that. I know nothing about that. And they went, you can. You've got the skills. You have transferable skills that you can use. We can teach you how to do business, data warehouse, all those things that I then had SMEs who did. I didn't need to do it. But you've got transferable skills, and believe in yourself when others actually sit there and go, yeah, you can do it. You can.
So you use the posh word if it's imposter thing. I say fake it until you make it. It's the same sort of thing. 20-year-old Michele.
20-year-old Michele.
Outside of the airbase, not looking at the squaddies.
No, my dad was out of the army by then, so I was very much in Manchester. I would definitely have a serious word about feeling guilty for not being ready, not being mature, and not being already at university, because it wasn't until I was 25 that I decided to go, for not being mature enough to have that perfect career that everybody was having, because there is just no rush. I know that life is too short and you should not put off your camper van for another until you retire, but I'm talking about actually when you are 20.
Almost there.
You damn. But yeah, it is about, like, at 20 you should be exploring everything. You should be finding out more about yourself and not into a rush of anything. And if you are young and irrelevant and immature and silly, then just get it out of your system, because one day you will. But if you don't recognise that it's actually okay to do that, you will end up have just innate guilt your entire life.
So go out there, explore, indulge, try different things. Sounds like drugs.
I can do drugs. No.
I'm kidding. Back to the 90s. But yeah, no, totally understand that. I'm going to have to cut some of this out because it's terrible. Drugs. Never took a drug in my life. So, fun. Now we'll come out get out the serious stuff out of the way, but we can talk about a bit of fun. So the jobs we do aren't simple jobs, and it takes a lot of effort and a lot of our energy. So wind down, downtime. Alison, I'm looking at you. What do we do?
I have 2 horses in the family.
Nice.
Very nice. And they don't suffer fools gladly. If you turn up there and you're in a bad mood, they just walk off and leave you. So it's incredibly grounding that you can just go there. You're out in nature. You switch off. And you basically have to be in the moment and work with what you've got in front of you. You can't sit there and say, oh, I should have done this and I should have done this, because the horses are like, speak to the hoof. I'm not hanging around here. I'm off to the grass unless you make it worth my while. So they're incredibly rewarding because they mirror back, and I can tell if I'm stressed or something, because they're all on edge going, oh, why is she not comfortable? Where's the tiger? It's going to come and eat us. So yeah, horses and just being out in nature are incredibly rebalancing and re-energizing.
So you're an outdoorsy type person. Wellies.
I have wellies, yes. You get wet, you look like a drowned rat, but it's wonderful.
Okay. Michele.
So I took up it's going to be a long time ago now, probably 15 years ago, I took up pottery. There is something about art therapy that I think is very, very important to people. We've got a little bit of an artistic streak in the family, but being working class family, there was never any encouragement to go down the arts route. It was always like, go out and find yourself a bloody job so you contribute to
Put money in pot.
To put money in pot, like, what was that?
Bread.
Bread, it was, wasn't it? Yeah, so the encouragement was to just go out and do your schooling, go to work. So I never did, but I do it in my spare time. So it's going to be about 15 years ago, I started going to a night class for pottery, and I love it. I've got some horrendous pieces because I'm not a very good thrower, like throwing it on a wheel, rubbish at it. I haven't got the patience to do a whole load of balls and work through them all one by one and then just throw them because they don't look like a vase. But I am a sculptor, and I do a lot of slab pots, when you roll things together and cut them and things like that. The ones that are awful are all in the garden. They're all in the garden, and I'm just going to let the weather just decide whether they live or not. But the better pieces are in the house, and some of them I've actually given away as gifts and then regretted it instantly because I'm thinking, they were brilliant. But yeah, so pottery and art is my passion.
So there's no disco parties and tequila slamming.
The ladies that do pottery, they are a lovely bunch, and there's some wild swimmers in there. Because I live in North Berwick, which is just outside of Edinburgh, and it's a seaside community, and without the Kiss Me Quick hats and the arcades, but we've got access to some beautiful bays, and even though it is the Forth and dead close to the North Sea, the wild swimming there is brilliant.
Yeah, well, I'll be coming up soon. I think October when we do that round table.
Right, hop on a train and I'll show you.
Yeah, playing. Quicker.
No, from Edinburgh to North Berwick is about 35 minutes on a train.
Oh, is it? Yeah. Oh, even better. That's a doable then.
Now, it's interesting you call it wild swimming. In South Africa, it's just swimming. I was like, what is wild swimming? Yeah, you go along the beach and there's, watch out for the crocodiles, and you're like, oh, okay, that's wild swimming. So yes,
hairy.
was a new term I had to learn here. What?
We're coming up to the last question, believe it or not. And it's about the USP, unique selling point. So this, like I said, this whole podcast, I've done God knows how many episodes now. I think I couldn't tell you, it's 12, 13 going on. And this is about you guys. It's not about where you work, whether it's Lloyds or NatWest Bank. It's about you guys. And, if I said, or I'm going to say to you, Alison, what is your unique selling point? What makes you you? And what made you that leader within what you do now in the banking world for Lloyds?
So I couldn't actually think of anything unique to me.
Okay, then Michele.
I am.
I'm joking.
Because we are all unique. So it's like, okay, well, what is my unique selling point? So I went and I asked my boss. I said, right, what's my unique selling point? And he said, you get things done with empathy. You take people with you. Okay. And I think that's the key thing is, yes, I'm very driven. Yes, I like results and I like making things, work and getting to where we want them to go. But I take people with me. And it's interesting because I've then looked back and I've had a number of people in a team. If I've changed roles, they've said, can we come with you? Can we come and work in your new team? And it's that empathy, it's that understanding, it's that collaboration and bringing the people with you, but still getting things done.
Very good.
Yeah.
Michele?
I was thinking about Life of Brian when they were saying, didn't he say, like, you're all individual, I'm not, and I'm not. Yeah, we are all unique, but I think I've also got that high empathy thing, but a data-driven high empathy person that I have. My confidence comes with facts and figures, and I use that in my arguments and my influencing and things like that, but also, definitely on the high empathy.
Okay. Well, we're coming to the end of this series of the podcast, or this episode of the podcast. It's a lot longer than my usual podcast, so I'm going to stretch it out a little bit. And thank you both for joining me, for Alison and for Michele.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been great. We're going to carry on after this, so sorry guys, you're going to miss out on the fun later on that's listening. And no, I really do appreciate it. And thank you for joining me on Cyberglass Ceiling.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
This episode was brought to you by Salt Cybersecurity, part of Salt Group, who specialise in providing trust across digital channels by helping major financial institutions verify the identity of their users and authenticating high-value transactions in the UK and globally.